Westerners, Christians are being tied to posts and used as bow and arrow practice. Women are being defiled, men are being forcibly circumcised. What you're doing, of course, is what many societies do. They're demonizing their opponent. If you're trying to convince people to go to war, you've got to paint them as worth fighting. You're going to be going 3,000 miles, leaving your home, your loved ones, risking your life. You're not going to do that to nice people who you've got things in common with. You're going to do it to nasty, unpleasant people.
There is a fascinating symmetry in the propaganda. Muslim polemicists put the boot into Christians with exactly the same theological insult used against them.
What is jihadi rhetoric? Is it just pro-Islamic or is it also anti-Christian?
Well, I think both are expressed here. You'll see you'll see that the monotheism of the Christians is impugned. They're often called their Christianity is called shirk, which means literally polytheism because of the Trinity.
They worship more than one god.
Apparently, the fact that Islam has problems with them worshiping Jesus, basically, and they can't they have difficulty accepting that. I mean, it's impossible for them to accept that.
Having recaptured Jerusalem and won their ticket to eternal life, these Franks, as the Crusaders were known to the Muslims, set up their own Crusader states in the Holy Land, known collectively as Outre-mer, beyond the sea. They lasted for 200 years. And you know what? In spite of the general taboo on intermarriage, a taboo that's still with us today, the two sides didn't always get on that badly. Christians and Muslims sometimes learned that beneath the demon mask of propaganda, they were all human beings.
They end up actually treating the Muslims who are in their lands actually rather well. They're taxed, but not too heavily. They're not really oppressed. And it's quite interesting. There's only one revolt against the Christian landlords, as it were, in the 88 years of the Kingdom of Jerusalem.
Crusaders in Palestine and Greater Syria almost for 2 centuries. During these 2 centuries, they changed. The Crusaders, when they come from Europe, they behave vicious, and they love to kill, and they like blood. But those who lived here and who were born here, they were influenced by the Muslims, by the Arabs, and they had friendships with the Arabs.
When the Crusaders arrived in Jerusalem, they found baths and sorbet and sugar, and sometimes they wore turbans, and sometimes they went hunting with the Arab military elites. And yet there was a curious lack of curiosity about each other's religions and the beginning of stereotypes. One Muslim account says that the Crusaders lacked all civilized virtues except courage. And then there is the disdainful account of Crusader morals given by Osama ibn Munkid, who describes how a Frankish knight hires a Muslim barber to give his wife what we would now call a Brazilian wax.
In the bath, the pubic hair would be shaved, and Frank sees Osama doing that, and he said, "This is great, do it to me." And then he says, "Do it to my wife." And they brings his wife, and the barber does it in front of everybody, and he doesn't seem to make a big deal about it. And the guy is just, Osama is not astounded. He's just astounded.
It just seems a very casual way to treat your women.
And he gives some other stories too about finding people in bed. A guy finding somebody in bed with his wife and the way he would react. And he said, it's comparing it basically the way we would do things, the Muslims.
You mean this is a Frankish knight?
Or a Frankish person.
Frankish person whose wife is found in bed with someone else?
Yeah, he kind of takes it in stride.
So it's a kind of French attitude towards it.
Well, you said that.
It wasn't just that the Muslims were baffled by the personal grooming habits of Crusader wives. We must accept that Outre-mer was a society still deeply divided on religious and ethnic lines. And the long-term ambition of the Muslims was to kick those Franks out completely. When the Crusaders started slicing through the Holy Land, the Muslims were disunited. But as the 12th century wore on, they were beginning to unite and to win back territory. A second crusade was mounted in 1147, only to end in failure. And then things really went wrong for the Christians. They met their nemesis. With his blazing eyes and hawk-like nose, he still looms in our imaginations as the most symbolically important of all Muslim warlords, a Kurd called Saladin or Saladin.
Saladin united Egypt, all of Muslim Syria, the two big cities of Damascus and Aleppo. All of this was now united. The resources that he had at his disposal were unlike anything that anybody had for 150 years before.
And he united it in the name of jihad.
He united in the name of jihad.
Jihad literally means putting an effort. And you have the spiritual jihad, taming oneself for goodness and avoid evil, and physical jihad, to defend Islam and to extend Islam to other territories.
In 1187, Saladin massacred the crusading forces in the most decisive battle of the whole campaign. It was at a death trap called the Horns of Hattin.
The Battle of Hattin was a brilliant maneuver. With very little losses to his side, he completely destroyed the Crusader army in the Holy Land, wiped out. Part of it killed, part of it executed, part of it captured.
That same year, Saladin recaptured Jerusalem after less than a century of Crusader control. And for the Christians, it was a humiliation. One man, above all, made it his mission to regain the Holy City. The blonde-haired, poetry-spouting, broadsword-wielding Richard I of England, the Lionheart, Coeur de Lion. And though they were willing to massacre each other's troops, Richard and Saladin have gone down as one of history's great double acts, which on the face of it is surprising.
Well, first of all, they never actually met. They go through intermediaries. Richard has a lot of dealings with Saladin's brother, who he got on with really very, very well. He found out in the midst of this holy war, they both like music. They also, as leading military men, share an interest in chivalry and hunting. So you can see some of the ways in which, even though people are engaged in this struggle, there are opportunities or areas in which they can find some common ground.
Richard Lionheart used to correspond with Saladin's brother, Al-Adil, and he offered one of the solutions, offered his sister to marry Al-Adil, and they ruled together the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So you have one Muslim king, one Crusader queen. That was really a midway solution. It didn't really happen, but it shows you the amicable relation.
Even though he was an infidel, Saladin became almost as fated in chivalric literature as Richard the Lionheart himself.
Saladin was a respectable fighter. He honored his word. In the Third Crusade, he was acting as a cavalier. He doesn't really brutalize. Look, when he took back Jerusalem, he kept the Church of the Holy Sepulchre intact. He permitted or allowed all the locals to leave peacefully.
So he was a model of chivalry.
Yes.
As Chaucer would say, he was a very perfect gentle knicht.
That's really why his legacy is still alive and vivid today.
And am I right thinking he actually gets a kind of honorary knighthood?
There's
like Bob Geldof or something?
There's some myths in some of the 13th century, sort of 50 or so years after the Third Crusade, that Saladin was actually knighted. Whether that's true or not is highly debatable, but the point is they believed he should be.
In 1291, Acre fell to the Muslim Turks. And that was the end of the last Crusader stronghold in the Holy Land. The last Crusader caught the last boat home to Europe. The Crusades had failed.